My name is Yuhao Zhang. I'm part of the Chess Society member, the inclusion officer, and I'll be giving the part 2 of the lessons which Marco began. This is intended for beginner to intermediate level players, and you can see my rating 1750 ELO or FIDE. So if you are higher than this rating, hopefully I'll still manage to actually give some insight, because at the end I will be analyzing a game I did play and show it. So topics to be covered today are some common chess terms, which are forks, skewers, pins, en passant, in-between moves, activity, discoveries, and open, semi-closed, and closed files. And I will be using these terms throughout the lesson during the game analysis too. So because it simplifies explanations, and these are kind of terms that is quite widely used when playing chess. And yeah, we'll also cover positional evaluations. So to see actually, how do you evaluate the position? How do you know if white or black is better? For example, in this picture, why is white better than black, for example? And Mark already touched upon piece activity and the importance of central squares. So we'll build upon that, and I will show some concrete examples in the game, which I will be analyzing. So starting with en passant, this is the Wikipedia definition of it. It's quite long. It's special pawn capture, which occurs only immediately after a pawn makes a move of 2 squares when it could have eaten the other pawn. So what's important to know here is that it might be a little confusing, but the capture has to occur immediately, that you cannot wait. If you have the opportunity to capture with en passant, you have to do it. If you wait another move, you can't recapture anymore. So as you could see over here, black pushed his pawn 2 moves out, and this gives white's opportunity to capture. And so this is something that is just important to keep in mind when playing chess, that this rule does exist, so that when you're playing against someone, you're not going to be surprised, because at beginner and even intermediate level plays, this is often forgotten at a lot of the times. All right, now looking at forks, pins, and skewers more often, these are something that is very important in chess, and something that really wins or loses the games, like on the spot. And it's the ability to recognize these moves, preventing them on your side, and trying to actually find forks, pins, and skewers to use against the opponent, which is going to be very, helpful for your game, because winning usually a full piece for a pawn is more than enough to convert the game. And usually it's hard to remember the fork, pin, and skewer structures, but the names aren't important really. It's just that you know that these exist. So the fork is essentially you attacking 2 pieces with a piece of less value. So for example, the rook and bishop in this case is more expensive and more valuable than the pawn you're using to attack them. And as you can see here, black can only save one of its pieces, the rook or the bishop. And since the rook is more valuable, they should obviously move the rook away. But in that case, they lose the bishop for the pawn. So that is the common idea of a fork. It's attacking 2 pieces at once with a less valuable piece. The pin is, as the name suggests, you're pinning a piece against something. And in this case, the queen is pinned against the king. And usually you refer to pins as, or they occur because the pinned piece cannot move. For example, in this situation, the black queen cannot move just by the rules of the game, because it's in front of the king. Now you can have other pins too. For example, you can have a knight pinned to a queen, for example. Well, it's not pinned by the rules, but if black does move the knight, then the queen would be captured. So it's pinning this a less important piece to a more important piece. Then you have skewers, which is kind of similar, but it's just it works as a pin, but it's kind of the fact that there's nothing to be able to block, and white can just capture the piece for free.
Just one thing. I think skewer is wrong, the image. Usually,
skewer?
Yeah, it's like a king should be in the middle. You need to move the king and you hit the knight. That's the concept of the skewer. It's the contrary of pin, basically. The important piece is in the middle, and the
oh yeah, actually yeah, that's
that you want to hit is
yeah. I'm sorry, that's also a pin. Yeah, sorry, skewer is
that's a pin.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a mistake in the diagram. The skewer is you checking a king. So just imagine if the knight and the king changed places. So you skewered the knight in that sense, because it's a guaranteed free piece, because after the king moves in the place of the knight, you win that knight for free. Yeah, that's my bad. So yeah, these are hard to remember. These reflect exactly what their name suggests. So you have pins, forks, and skewers. And yeah, then these files, as the name suggests, it's basically vertical part of the chessboard. So you altogether have 8 files. And you can have closed files, which means that both pawns are not captured. Semi-open files, which one pawn is only in the way, and then fully open files when there's no pawns in the way. And these files are important because it's where you want to usually place your rook on an open file or semi-open file, or a closed file which is about to be open, because the rook will gain more squares and be more active. So, when these, you don't need to remember these terms by heart. These are just used to describe these situations on the board. But it's the reason why we have names for these is because they're quite important when developing pieces and deciding where to place your pieces. The rule is you usually want to activate your pieces, and rooks are more active on open files. And yeah, as the last part, I will be going over one game I played on light chess. It's I believe, a rapid game I played, and I will demonstrate maybe a little bit of my thought behind the moves I made, and show kind of these principles that I just had in the slides. Do you guys still see it? Oh no, you guys don't see it.
We can see the chess, the lichess.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
You can see it here? Okay. Yeah, so yeah, it's a game that I won, and I was white. So these openings, you don't have to focus now too much. So because this video isn't about opening theory, but for those who don't know me, starting with knight c3 is considered a ready opening. I think of it more as like a queen's gambit, but with a weird move order, because that's what I always go for. So I won't focus on the theory behind these openings now, but just kind of the principles of chess, that you're going for activating your pieces, going for center control. So I just happened to push my C and D pawns for center control. Usually the more you push your E and D pawns, which is fine too, then just developing your pieces out, as me and the opponent are doing, getting minor pieces out. And you don't want to move a piece twice, because that's in a way wasting a move where you can just develop another piece out, because you want to get your pieces out as fast as possible and your king to safety as fast as possible. So getting my piece out, and I should probably turn the engine off. Okay, seems like I can't turn the engine off on this one, but it's fine.
If you click on the book, I think it turns off. Light up book.
Oh, it still does. Oh, there we go. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, so we're developing our pieces, and yeah, after I played my bishop to g5, he pushed e6. So now you can see that the knight is, in a sense, pinned to the queen, because if he moves the knight, I win the queen. So, you know, he shouldn't. So, but you can think, well, is this a bad move? Well, you know, why did he voluntarily pin his knight to the queen? Well, by pushing this pawn, he allows his bishop to, you know, have active squares. Maybe bishop b4 or d6 are options now. And I just, I mean, this boot wasn't too accurate, but I was just kind of annoyed of if he played g4 and then maybe double up my pawns, but should maybe e3 is a better move. But in the sense here, it's just developing is the main idea. Doesn't matter how you develop. Everyone has their styles, but getting your pieces out. And he unpins the knight by developing the bishop, which is a good move. And now I push and want to develop my bishop. He pushes my bishop back, I move back. And I didn't move to h4 because it could have just given him free space and I didn't want that. So I moved back this way. He castles. I move my queen out here. The reason why I didn't develop my bishop, for example, to e2 or d3 is because if I went to e2, he could have taken my pawn, where then I was quite forced to then recapture the pawn. So I would have moved my bishop twice just to get here, and it would seem as a little bit of a waste. But so I developed my queen. I took the pawn. I retreated my knight because it was under bishop, sorry, because it was under attack. I could have also traded, but I thought there was no hurry to trade, and if you trade, you could trade it. And now I finally developed my bishop. So I was a little behind in development as white, which is obviously not ideal, but he didn't have any big attacks, luckily, or didn't go for any big sacrifices. And then he just brings his pieces out. I finally castle. He brings his knight deeper into the position. And it's at these points where, you know, you might think you're fully developed, but, you know, all of our rooks are still, you know, at the corners in fully closed files. Whereas you can see already there's a semi-open file here. So, you know, if you don't know what to do in a position, you always try to, first of all, you know, activate your pieces. You know, and you decide whether they're active or not is by their positions and how many squares they're covering, which squares they're covering. For example, my light square bishop isn't really doing anything at all because it's not watching anything, any important squares, whereas my bishop is right now watching much more important squares, you know, like, you know, lasering deep into the position. And ideally, I would maybe want my bishops to actually, you know, watch the king side diagonals to go for a constructive attack. So it's important to, you know, be able to evaluate well on what's good for you and what's not good for you. So, you know, king safety, piece activity is, you know, takes you a long way so that you don't start making, there's always a reason behind your move. Now, that's what I do. I put my rook on an open lane, and it's usually you have to decide which rook to move to the open lane. Why did I not move the F rook? Why did I move the C rook? Well, the reason is why I moved the C rook is because if I did move my F rook, then my A rook doesn't really have any squares to go. So by moving this rook, I allow this rook to have more useful squares. And he attacks the bishop. I trade, pushes his knight back. I bring my knight here, thinking of ideas of maybe pushing e4, and but you know, this realized that this isn't really it isn't really a fork because he can always recapture this knight, so it isn't a double attack, and this is called more like an in between. That when I do push this and these are both under attack, he can recapture in between my threat. So I'd have to capture back and he can just retreat. But also the reason why I moved my knight is because as my white light square bishop isn't doing much on this diagonal, maybe I can shift it to the other diagonal. But he captures anyway. I capture with rook, and I could have captured with queen or pawn. And the reason why I captured with rook was that since this is one of the semi-open files, and so is this, I was thinking that maybe I can double my rook, and at some day this file might open up. So I didn't do any extensive calculations on this, but just like as an intuition on doubling your rooks on a semi-open file or open file is usually good for you. And he attacks my rook and knight at the same time. So it's a forced trade, which I have to take. I could have also retreated my rook and could have captured, but I decided to capture directly because I saw that after he takes, me pushing this pawn gives me quite good of a space advantage, because after he retreats, I get, well, first of all, my rook doubled, and I also at maybe some point get this e4 push, which grabs a lot of space, and as you can see, kind of takes away the squares of this bishop. He moves his queen. I decide to actually trade bishops. Yeah, the reason why I didn't actually push this pawn here anymore was because I was thinking of trading this bishop on this diagonal and have my rook switch to the other open lane, because his queen is now on that open lane, so he can't open it up with his queen in front of it. So I took it. I moved the other rook in front of it, and I started pushing these pawns, and now I finally pushed e4, as you see, which is supported by my f3 pawn here. And yeah, now with only queens and rooks on the game, you have to evaluate the possible threats your opponent has and we have, but since we have the same exact minor pieces, it's quite similar. For example, going to a more in-depth view, I have very weak dark squares, but since the dark square bishops are traded away, his queen is the only piece which can attack these dark squares. So that's why I'm not too worried about my dark square weaknesses, because he can't coordinate any dangerous attacks. If he had a dark square bishop, then my king could be quite vulnerable. But I wasn't too worried about this pawn structure with the open dark squares next to my king. He doubles up 2, and I push. We have a few trades, and of course he can't take, because it gives me just some activity. Well, taking wouldn't be too good. So he pushes, and him pushing gave me a pass pawn, which I do push. And this move was just to kind of put some pressure on this rook and supporting this pawn, having a rook queen battery with this along this pawn. So if he ever decides to, I don't know, he has maybe move his rook to go for this pawn, he can't, because I'll just capture the rook for free. So putting some pressure on the mobility of this rook, for example. So he moves the other rook out of the way. I decide to push a pawn. I was in this position, I was just waiting to see what my opponent does, because to be honest, I don't know if I was low on time, but I didn't have any concrete ideas. So I decided to push this pawn, anticipating maybe if he comes down, I'm able to double push, and this pawn is covered by the rook. So I have quite a solid position, and maybe then start activating my king. Well, he brings the rook down, putting extra pressure on this pawn, but I have 3 pieces protecting it, so he'd need more pieces to attack and able to win. I just continue pushing my pawn. Now, this is the mistake which he made. So he has 3 pieces attacking the pawn, and if he takes, and actually I think if he takes, it's still not good for him. Takes. Now, if he takes, it's going to be a queen for 2 rooks, which point-wise should be good for me, but I wasn't interested because I already saw that this was a mistake. So this is where calculations come into play, where you look at your possible options and see if they're good or not. So here, taking is fine. It's looks like a weird move, but it's a temporary queen sacrifice. So of course he's going to take the free queen, but the point is now after pushing this pawn, he can recapture with the queen, but then I win the queen, and I'm threatening on queening the next square, so I'd just be up a clean rook. So he, you know, and he's probably thinking that I quit queen now, and he captures, so I'd be 2 rooks against the queen, but he probably thought that, you know, his queen is covering the queening square when I recapture, so he'll still have a queen. But the problem is that the queen is now pinned to the king because he can't move. So I saw this pin in that variation, so I decided to take it, and it's at this position where he resigned because he would have been down an entire rook, and that's how I won the game. So this game, it was quite slow. We both played quite passively until, you know, the very last point here. And my point is that, like, you don't have to find any like crazy sacrificing moves. You know, it's enough just to wait for your opponent to make a mistake, but by you playing logical moves, by, you know, in the principles of activation, piece activity, and that usually leads to you know, a favorable middle game, end game, and yeah, and so I think that's the end of this tutor. And I mean, if you have any questions regarding anything I said, you can undeafen yourself or type to the chat. If not, I think we can just continue the normal meetings that we're going to have on Discord. We'll just be playing each other as always. And yeah, so this session is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. So if anyone wants a recap or anything like that, they can access it. And yeah, that's all. So if there are no questions, then I'll end the meeting so we can continue with our regular meeting on Discord. And I do not think there are any questions. So yeah, I'll see you guys there then. So I'm gonna stop the meeting. Oh yeah, thanks guys. And yeah.
Thanks, Yuhao.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm ending the meeting now.